Breaking news is coming from the Middle East. Powerful explosions occurred just a few minutes ago in several Iranian provinces. The explosions happened amid insider information that Donald Trump has prepared an attack of such magnitude that it will definitely lead to the overthrow of the Ayatollah regime. There is now information emerging that the explosions were an attempt to eliminate the commander of the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy and other high-ranking IRGC commanders. At the same time, it became known that the naval exercises of China, the Russian Federation, and Iran in the Persian Gulf were urgently cancelled. Against this backdrop, the Wall Street Journal reports that United States President Donald Trump has instructed his advisors to prepare prompt and tough scenarios for strikes against Iran. According to his plan, these should not lead to a prolonged conflict, but should remove the Ayatollah regime from power in Tehran, or at the very least force this regime to accept American terms on the nuclear deal. But the most shocking news in this context is the following. Saudi Arabia's defense minister Khalid bin Salman, during a meeting in Washington, privately asked Donald Trump to take military action against Iran. According to the younger brother of Mohammed bin Salman, Trump will have to use force anyway, since he has already made several threats against Iran. If this doesn't occur, the regime will become stronger. Although, let me remind you, earlier the governments of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates publicly promised Iran that they would not allow the Americans to attack Iran from their territory. What's going on in Iran now? My name is Alexei Pichi. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave any comment, and subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pichi News. The link to it is in the description of this video. There we post breaking news as it comes in. So, right now there are reports of a series of explosions in Iran that happened almost simultaneously in several regions of the country. According to local sources and posts on social media, incidents have been reported in Bandar Abbas, Avaz, Abadan, Khorramshahr, Kasr-e Shirin and Parand. Special attention was given to reports specifically from Parand. There, according to eyewitnesses and what is known at this moment, the explosion occurred in the area of one of the largest facilities of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps of Iran. And now photos and videos are spreading online which are claimed to show the aftermath of this explosion. A little later, reports appeared online that the target of the attack was the commander of the naval forces of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps of Iran, Alireza Tangsiri. And some media outlets have already reported his elimination, but the Iranian agency Tasnim says that this information is not true. In addition, there are reports that the explosion in the port city of Bandar Abbas may have occurred allegedly due to a gas leak, while other reports say that the building is actually not equipped with a gas pipeline and is not connected to gas, therefore it was more likely an attack after all. Also, explosions happen nearly simultaneously in several provinces, and experts are now focusing on the locations. It is reported that a series of explosions also occurred in other Iranian cities, including Avaz, located near the Iran-Iraq border, where at least 4 people were killed. And now people are recalling that it was in these areas where the biggest protest outburst happened, and I have a separate video on this topic. So, if you want to understand the reasons behind the protests in Iran and which regions protested the most, go back to my YouTube channel and be sure to watch it. But I still tend to believe that these were planned attacks, and I'll explain why. The thing is, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps announced plans to hold naval exercises in the waters of the Persian Gulf at the end of this week. This prompted a reaction from the United States Central Command, which called on Tehran to avoid provocative behavior at sea. So Russia and China were supposed to join these exercises, and Iran, Russia, and China wanted to show in the Persian Gulf how strong they are together. And supposedly other countries in the region shouldn't get involved or help the Americans attack Iran. As a result, after today's explosions in Iran, the naval exercises have already been cancelled, so these attacks look like an attempt to disrupt those maneuvers. Meanwhile, the news agency Reuters reports that Israel is not involved in the series of explosions that occurred in Iran. In addition, it is worth noting that just before the explosions, Iran brought its armed forces to maximum combat readiness amid the sharp escalation of the situation in the region. This was publicly stated today by the chief of the General Staff of the Iranian Armed Forces, Amir Khatami, while commenting on the active buildup of the American military presence in the Persian Gulf. According to him, any aggressive actions by the United States or Israel could have serious consequences. Khatami warned that a mistake by the enemy would threaten not only its own security but also the stability of the entire region as well as the security of Israel. After that, the president of Iran, Masoud Pezeshkian, spoke and clearly stated that protests cannot be armed, protests cannot be violent, and in his view, any protests by the Iranian people should take place at most in the following format. People come out and shout something. Therefore, he says that the protests in Iran at the beginning of January were 100% organized by Americans and Israelis. It was their special operation, and it's not even a fact that those were Iranians. But sorry for such a lyrical digression. The point is, let's get back to the chief of the General Staff of the Iranian Armed Forces, Amir Khatami. And just an hour before the explosions that happened today across Iran, he made the following statement, quote, "Today, without a doubt, our missile power, air defense capabilities, and other aspects of our defense are in a stronger and more advanced position than before the 12-day war that was imposed on us." He's referring to the June 2025 war. Iran's nuclear program cannot be destroyed by military means. The country's scientific knowledge and technological achievements will remain regardless of possible losses, including the deaths of scientists or civilians. The Chief of Staff of the Iranian Armed Forces is essentially saying they don't care how many Iranians or scientists die, they will continue the nuclear program regardless. This is where it gets interesting. We now begin the analysis. The Wall Street Journal writes today that United States President Donald Trump has instructed his advisors to prepare prompt and tough scenarios for a possible strike on Iran. According to his plan, these scenarios should not lead to a prolonged conflict in the Middle East, but should deal a significant blow to the regime of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. According to sources, the optimal scenario involves strikes strong enough that the Iranian leadership would have no alternative but to agree to the United States terms on the nuclear deal. As previously reported, in recent days, United States President Donald Trump has been presented with a broader list of possible military actions against Iran. It is noted that these measures are aimed at increasing pressure by inflicting additional damage on the country's nuclear and missile infrastructure, as well as undermining the position of Iran's supreme leadership. But the most shocking information on this matter came from Saudi Arabia today. Earlier, the governments of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates publicly promised the Iranian authorities that they would not allow the United States to enter or use their territory for strikes. But today, Axios reports that the Saudi Arabian Defense Minister, Prince Khalid bin Salman, stated at a closed briefing in Washington that if President Trump does not follow through on his threats against Iran, the regime in Tehran will ultimately become much stronger. Therefore, there is no other choice but to strike, as if to say, if Trump said it, it has to be done. Here's a very important point. Let me remind you that representatives from Israel on one side and from Saudi Arabia on the other arrived in Washington the day before, and they were consulting President Trump's administration. And here the Saudis are clearly playing their own game. Let me explain. Khalid bin Salman is the Minister of Defense of Saudi Arabia, but he is also the younger brother of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and his closest confidant. Khalid bin Salman was in Washington for Iran meetings as the region prepared for possible United States military action. Here's Khalid's call to strike Iran. Well, this is a clear departure from Saudi Arabia's public statements warning against escalation in the region, and it's a departure from the deep concern expressed by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to Trump just 3 weeks ago. Rumors suggested bin Salman's warning was among the reasons Trump postponed the strike. But now his brother Khalid bin Salman is allegedly saying that no, a strike will still have to be carried out. In the end, Riyadh surprised everyone. Next is a quote from Axios. Khalid bin Salman stated that, in his opinion, Trump would have to resort to military action after making threats or within a few weeks, but he would also have to try to mitigate the risks of regional escalation. If this doesn't happen, it will only strengthen the regime's position. So now the United States of America has not public, but support for strikes on Iran also from Saudi Arabia. If it turns out that today's explosions are also the work of the Americans or their proxy forces, then we can assume that Trump has chosen a strategy of gradual targeted strikes against the leadership of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. If you found this episode interesting and useful, you can support the work of this YouTube channel with your donation or a paid subscription using the links and details in the description of this video. That's all for now. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.